Coming up, we speak with the Chief Executive Officer of the American Indian Community Development Corporation and the Hoop Dance World Championships. We have all of the sights and sounds. Plus, we're talking tribal consultation with the Interior Department. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amirawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. We start in Washington, D.C., where President Joe Biden has unveiled his budget proposal, and already Native advocates are looking at what's in it for Indian country. The budget proposal is for the fiscal year 2023, and most notably, it includes significant increases for Indian health programs over the next decade. Spending for the next year would be $9.1 billion and $36.7 billion a decade from now. The president's budget is a formal wish list. It remains the task of Congress to actually budget and appropriate the funding. This often results in a gap between what the White House proposes and what Congress actually spends. But the White House budget is critical because it frames the debate. Stacey Boland is the executive director of the National Indian Health Board. She says this proposal represents a significant funding increase.
I think that the president's vision for American Indian Alaska Native health is bold and necessary. I also think that the president's vision demonstrates that he listens to Indian country. He's heard the things that we've said. And by putting forth a budget that is predicated on making the Indian Health Service a mandatory program, that's incredibly bold. And that really aligns with the federal trust responsibility for American Indian Alaska Native health.
Up next, the budget request goes to Congress for consideration, and the federal budget begins on October 1st. How much of an impact have tribal nations in Oklahoma had on the state's economy? A new study released last week says a big one. In the fiscal year 2019, tribal nations had a $15.6 billion impact on Oklahoma's economy. Elijah McIntosh is the chairman of the Oklahoma Tribal Finance Consortium. His organization led the effort.
This means that in addition to those that we directly employ ourselves, the number of jobs that are created and maintained in Oklahoma because of tribal operations. As an employer and job creator, through our business and government operations, tribal nations in total support 96,177 jobs.
One of the greatest areas of impact came from the healthcare sectors, where there are more than 45 tribally run facilities. Gaming was another big factor. Because of gaming compacts, tribal nations have paid more than $1.5 billion for public education. In Washington, D.C., Congressman Rahul Grijalva is taking next steps to move forward with a key piece of legislation. The RESPECT Act will require federal agencies to consult with tribal governments before making decisions that impact tribal lands, rights, resources, or citizens. On Monday, Grijalva held a press conference to announce that he will hold a markup session on April 6th. Up next, federal lawmakers will look at the bill in detail to make any changes before it is sent to the House floor. Well, the Oscars were a major buzz this week following an incident with two movie stars. The event is serving as a reminder of Sacheen Littlefeather's noteworthy Oscar moment. In 1973, Littlefeather iconically declined an Oscar on behalf of actor Marlon Brando. That moment is now being retold in a new documentary called Sacheen: Breaking the Silence on Amazon Prime. Littlefeather spoke to ICT last year about the documentary.
Well, I am the first woman of color, the first Indigenous woman to ever use the Academy Award as a political platform to speak out about the stereotype of Native Indigenous people in film, in media, and in television.
As Littlefeather read her statement about the atrocities committed against Indigenous people, she heard boos and cheers. Actor John Wayne nearly stormed the stage to object before he was held back by security guards. That moment had dire consequences for her career.
I could not be hired because the FBI told a bunch of lies about me, that I wasn't Indian, that I rented that dress, it was a costume, that I was not to get a job in the industry again, and so on and so forth. So it was a very difficult period for me.
Littlefeather says despite her action, she has no regrets. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, the Department of the Interior responds to tribal consultation, and 100 hoop dancers compete for the World Championship. But first, Mike Gozy joins us to talk about how his organization is working to support unhoused Native people in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mike Gozy has had a long history of service in the Native community in the Twin Cities. His work in chemical health and dependency continues to inform how he supports harm reduction and unhoused Natives within the American Indian Community Development Corporation. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So for our viewers who are meeting you for the first time, tell us about yourself and some of the work that you do.
Okay, my name is Mike Gozy. I'm the CEO of American Indian Community Development Corporation in Minneapolis. I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin and have been in my position since June of 2008. So it's been a little bit of a run for me.
The American Indian Community Development Corporation does a number of things. Tell us about some of the services you offer and about the community that you help.
AICDC, as the short term, we do a number of things. You're correct. One thing we do is we run the county detox, the chemical withdrawal management center. We've been doing that for almost 20 years, and that is a 64-bed unit that provides withdrawal services for Hennepin County, which is the largest county in the state of Minnesota. And there we have 64 beds, and we try to do our best to make people an opportunity to get withdrawal from alcohol or other substances, and help them find a referral that makes sense for them in their next quest for a better life.
And I understand a lot of the parts of this detox use culturally sensitive ways to approach Native people. Tell us about that.
Well, that it's been really tough. The detox is only a up to 72-hour stay, and it is a inpatient facility, and so we do our best in making all services available to all cultures. We serve not only Native people, but in fact, it's getting to be less of the service that we do. We're seeing more other cultures, including white, the larger culture, being served there too. So we do what we can, but it is a facility that they are in. So there's not a whole lot we can do. We have other services that provide much more cultural specific servicing.
One of the other services that you all offer, of course, is to help unhoused Native folks. Tell us about those efforts.
In the last, ever since 2019, to the Wall of Forgotten Natives, AICDC has been working at how do we create more housing opportunities for folks, housing and service opportunities. In the last 3 years, we've created 3 different housing alternatives. One of them really focusing on folks with an alcohol dependency. 2 of them focusing on people that have an opioid problem. And we use a low barrier harm reduction model. And we also, in the last couple of years, have opened up a 50-bed shelter, which is a Native-specific shelter. We have 100% Native staff, and we do our best to serve 100% Native population in that. And it's a 50-bed facility. And we also have an overnight facility for people that just are still stuck in no place to go. And so we do our best to make every option available for folks to help them through some traumatic times.
Mike, I'm really curious. How has the pandemic played a factor into all the services that you offer? Have you seen an increase? Have you had to do things differently? Tell us about that.
AICDC is kind of a different animal in that regard. We have 24-hour services. And so the detox is 24 hours, our housing is 24 hours. And so we did not lay anybody off over the course of the pandemic. We just didn't have that option. We needed people to be in their place, serving the population. We worked with the state of Minnesota Department of Health in creating some really standards in how to work with homeless folks within the pandemic and people that live in community housing, because a lot of our housing is community based. And so we really decided early to really take their expertise and work within our program. And that really helped us to really mitigate a lot of transmission of COVID and the variants. And so we've been very successful. And really, the state and actually the CDC has used some of the programs we have as a standard of how to address the COVID and the pandemic. We grew over the time of the pandemic. We added housing, we added services. Our outreach team was increased. And so over the course of 3 years, a lot of the agencies chose to huddle and keep what they had. AICDC felt it was important to look outside and see what more we could do to help the people.
Mike, I have one last question for you. If you're looking 10 years down the line, where do you hope that AICDC is at in helping vulnerable Native people?
Well, we hope to expand our breath a little bit, because it's not just the homeless folks, it's the housing, it's people in housing, the families that really need more support, more help in creating a better life. AICDC looks at improving the lives and livelihoods of the people that we serve. And we look forward to continuing to do that any way we can. I think we look at a full picture and we look at abundance versus, everything in a box.
Mike Gozi, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I have everybody have a fantastic day and look forward to meeting somebody again.
The Interior Department has announced a series of proposed revisions to rules around land acquisitions and gaming. These changes come in direct response to input from tribal leaders during an October 2021 tribal consultation session. Joining us today is Holly Cook-Macaro. She's a partner at Spirit Rock Consulting and an ICT regular contributor. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Leah. It's good to see you.
So let's start off first with the land acquisitions. Tell us about what these proposed revisions are.
Well, the Department of Interior announced yesterday that these two proposed sets, they're actually draft revisions. And I think they were very careful about highlighting that, not so it didn't appear as if they wrote the revisions and then are sending them out. This is really a set of draft revisions for them to receive feedback on. There are 4 consultations scheduled for the month of May with tribal governments. So they will receive that feedback and then come out with the proposal. So these regs are in 2 very key areas of interest to tribes: the land regulations, as you said, and I think we'll touch on the other, which pertains to gaming. But as we all know, our tribal homelands and the acquisition of those are really the foundation for us to exercise our sovereignty, and give us the engine for tribal self-determination. So when we have these revisions on the fee to trust process, which is what we go through when we acquire lands and have them placed in a trust, by the Department of Interior, um, it's really of great interest to how these are shaped and formed. The proposal, I think, is really a result of, as you noted, the input received from the consultations in October. And this is where the rubber hits the road when administrations want to make changes in policy. And when they take a look at the regs, it might seem really in the weeds for the rest of Indian country, for kind of our Joe Indian, on the res, but this is how the feeder trust process is, how we do land back, is how we gain jurisdiction. It's how it's the foundation for so many things. It doesn't. These are key regulations that are going to clarify the process, and I think will be of great interest. Those consultations coming up in about 6 weeks.
I think you're hitting on a really key point here, Holly, because in my reporting, I've so often wondered what exactly are tribal leaders saying about the fee to trust process. And so often, what it essentially boils down to is that tribal leaders feel like it takes too long, they feel like it's too expensive, and they also feel like it's just a really cumbersome process. So, in this draft revision, are you seeing anything that would potentially give tribal leaders what they want in terms of making it easier for them?
I think that is actually the overall goal in response to what the administration heard in October, that the decentralization that Secretary Holland is moving, not all, but some, a majority of them, out for approval to the BIA regional directors, which kind of takes out one step there, right? If you've got to go, you submit it in your region, but then the regional director and that process has to go through. But then if it also has to then go to the Department of Interior, it adds months and sometimes years to the process. That one moving things out to the regional directors, I think is going to have a huge impact, certainly on the timeline, and that is something that we often hear about. So these are substantive changes to the process in response to what the administration has heard from Indian country.
Let's move to the second topic that the Interior Department is addressing revisions in, and that's gaming. Tell us what you know about that so far.
So this second set is in regards to the Class 3 tribal state compact process. Part of what they're doing is changing the name. They're taking out the process, just tribal state, Class 3 tribal state gaming compact. It is particularly timely because we have when tribes negotiate a compact with the governor of their state, which is required under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act in order to operate Indian gaming casinos in each particular state, those are then submitted to the Department of Interior. And for instance, in California, which is home to the largest Indian gaming market in the country, there are 30 tribes right now whose compacts are expired. They've gone through a negotiation process. Several have been submitted to the department and rejected for policy reasons. Essentially, Assistant Secretary Newland has denied them because the scope is beyond what should be considered under the parameters of the tribal gaming operation. So these revisions are clarifying the process for review and approval at the Department of Interior. I'm still combing through them, and I know that many people across the country are combing through them as well.
You talked about this earlier, but of course, all of these ideas are simply that they're ideas. They have to go through tribal leaders through 4 consultation sessions that'll happen next month. I'm sorry, actually in May. I'm curious if you could preview what you think that federal officials will hear from tribal leaders in those sessions.
I think on both, certainly on the fee to trust process, you hit the nail on the head earlier on the things that you listed, the timeline, the expense, a little clarity on the process. Really, it's the timeline has been the issue there. And on the Class 3 tribal state gaming compact process, clarity through there. What is the role of the Secretary of Interior in reviewing the tribal state gaming compacts? And that is what they're going to hear. There are going to be a lot of questions, particularly given what's happening in Florida, California, around the country as these gaming compacts come up, and new areas of gaming are coming onto the table, mobile, sports, all of that.
Well, as usual, we'll continue to follow all of these developments. Thank you, Holly.
Yes, thank you, Leah.
Dancing and competition. That was the site this weekend at the Heard Museum's 32nd annual World Championship Hoop Dance Contest. ICT's Max Montour and Shirley Snavy have this report.
For what they get to witness, this champion hoop dancing, this is world class, and they're excited. And so some of them are tired, but they're staying here with us watching. And a lot of our hoop dance fans are senior citizens, and so they come year after year. Some are snowbirds, but a lot of our hoop dance fans, they've been here many years. They have their favorite dancer that they saw dance 15 years ago, and if they don't come that year, they'll come up and say, "Are they here? Is so-and-so here?" And so it's a great family. The hoop dance fans are hoop dancers and they're singers. So.
Last year's contest was virtual. This year, a record number of 100 dancers competed for $25,000. Samson Six Killer Cinqua won the men's adult category.
Oh man, I'm just I guess overwhelmed with emotions. Just how the past 2 years have been going, and not knowing if we would come back together again, and then not seeing people when we do come back, and it's just happy to share the dance and happy to be with everybody again.
The hoop dance is an incredibly athletic event. Sade Faye Young is a high school athlete at the Santa Fe Indian School.
We competed in the New Mexico 3A state finals for basketball, and we got second place for that. And then I also competed in state for volleyball as well. Fell short, and now I'm doing softball.
But she didn't fall short in the teen division. Her grandfather sang for her.
Surprisingly, I got this award. I thought my competitors that I competed with, I think they did an amazing job, and they did deserve, I think some of them did deserve the first place, but I mean, it ended up in my hands, which is very surprising, but I am honored to get this award.
Beanie John was the only woman in the top 6 finishers in the adult category.
I think I saw my first woman hoop dancer was Lisa Ojig, and I was just like really, really young. I think I was about maybe 12 years old when I first saw her. And she was one of the women that I was like, all right, she's doing it. And predominantly men, but I knew that this was the dance that was for me, and it's a storytelling, healing dance, and it really encapsulated everything that I was feeling at a young age and allowed me to express everything through hoop dancing.
Derek Davis is a 7-time winner in the adult division, but this is his first year dancing and winning in the senior division.
Mainly it was just the art form of being able to convey a message of balance, comfort, something that we all seek, that safety. So the storytelling and the dance, and then the audience appreciating that reminder through the cultural singing and dancing.
Quentin Pipestone from Alberta, Canada, taught Samson Cinqua to dance.
I was taught that I dance for everyone that wants to dance and everyone that can't dance, and always for the ones before us and all of our ancestors and the ones who fought to keep our traditions alive, for us to be able to share this with everybody, actually have a contest.
Dancing is a family tradition for many.
I identify as two-spirit, so I'm actually a men's grass dancer. I was initiated when I was 10 years old. So a lot of my style is very grounded, but my siblings who did hoop dancing were fancy dancers. So I get my high stepping and then the very low stepping, so I combined it. And we do a lot of storytelling, traditional storytelling with my parents. So I always try to make it very theatrical for the audience so they can make up their own story as they're watching me.
During the afternoon break, I asked MC Dennis Bowen if he had a pick for the winner.
I'm a grandpa. They're all winners. Having announced high school basketball, wrestling, track, football, they were all our children out there playing. And it's like, let's not keep score, let's just play the game. No score. And I feel that way. I used to announce basketball. That's how I felt. It's like, I did the announcing for their parents that want to hear their child's name. But I didn't want to announce the score, So that's how my ancestors wanted me to be fair, and to share fairness. Good way.
In Phoenix, Arizona with Max Montour, I'm Shirley Snavy, ICT News.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.